Hello, my name is Kristina Crump. I'm a consumer bankruptcy attorney in Kansas and also Western District of Missouri.
Hi there, I'm Chris Coons. I'm also a consumer bankruptcy attorney.
Today we're going to talk about taxes, or what kind of taxes are dischargeable, not dischargeable in the bankruptcy, and just kind of give you a basic idea of what that means, what you're looking at. So what kind of taxes are not dischargeable in the bankruptcy, like ever?
Never dischargeable taxes are almost always going to be what we call trust fund taxes. Mm-hmm. Trust fund tax is a tax that you withheld out of somebody's paycheck or out of a sale, and it was supposed to be paid over to the government. So if you're an employer and you have employees and you're withholding taxes to go to either income taxes, mm-hmm. Social Security, Medicare, and then you don't pay it over, that's never going to be dischargeable. Mm-hmm. You cannot get rid of that. And if you had a business where you were selling T-shirts and you were charging sales tax and you never paid it over to the state, that is also never going to be dischargeable. And there's one other category, generally, at least with the federal government, and that is where they have prepared your tax returns for you. Mm-hmm. So if you don't file your tax returns, there are cases where they will prepare and file returns for you, and if you owe money out of that, that may never be dischargeable. You're not going to get rid of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not aware of cases where you can go in and file them yourselves. We have to look at the specifics of that. There might be some time limits on that, but generally, if you come in and you've got a tax debt from 10 years ago and it turns out that an IRS agent filed the returns for you, you're stuck. You're going to be stuck with that.
Mm-hmm. What kind of taxes are dischargeable or potentially dischargeable in the bankruptcy?
Well, the most common taxes that are dischargeable in bankruptcy are taxes that were filed on time and were filed more than 3 years ago. So if they've been more than 3 years due and owing, and they were income taxes and they were filed on time, whether they're state or federal taxes, they're going to be dischargeable. Now, if there is a tax lien, that may complicate matters.
Is there a way to find out if you have a tax lien, or is there a place to look?
Yeah, generally you can run a search. We can run searches to see if there are tax liens outstanding. For the state, they're usually called tax warrants, and they're going to be filed down in the district court. For the feds, I believe you're looking at the Register of Deeds, but you may also be able to find them in your own tax records because they should be showing up there. And for most people today, you can create an account with the IRS, and you can often run checks on these things yourself.
What are some of the, I guess, what advice do you give people when it comes to dealing with taxes or tax obligation? I know mine, first of all, is always file taxes, whether you can pay them or not.
File your returns.
File your returns on time. Please do.
I think all lawyers probably, that's just right at the top of the list. Everything in the law runs around time limits. And you know, lawyers often talk about the clock is ticking. Well, when you don't file your returns, no clock ticks, no time runs, there's no statute of limitations running on things because you haven't done the return. And so first and foremost, my advice is get your returns filed, even if you cannot pay. I would say outside of the bankruptcy context, I would also point this out. The IRS in particular is extremely lenient in terms of payment arrangements and in terms of doing some kind of a workout.
I think you can set up payments online. You can usually get a hold of them. There are different programs that are available. The plan payment itself is reasonable.
Yeah, the fear of the Internal Revenue Service by the average person is kind of a drummed up fear. It's not something you should take that seriously. If you owe money, call them, make arrangements.
Set up arrangements. It's not like in the movies where they show up and take your couch. I'm sure it happened to some people. It does
happen, but those kinds of seizures are rare. They require a huge amount of effort. The IRS does not do them lightly because they almost always involve, there's a law enforcement aspect to that. You've really got to be in trouble with them, and usually for an extended period of time before you start seeing things like that. Now that may not be every case, but that's certainly been my experience. Now, the state collection agencies are completely different. They are far more aggressive in terms of collections, and when you begin to run behind to your state taxing authority, what you typically find is that they will come quickly.
Well, like Kansas Department of Revenue, for instance, I
Very
think gives
quickly.
you about 12 months to pay off whatever you owe them. And they, if you are not in communication, I think they will quickly file those tax warrants.
Yeah.
And then also seize potentially wages, bank
Oh,
accounts.
they'll garnish.
They will
Yeah,
collect
they'll garnish,
aggressively.
and they actually have third-party collectors that work with them that will come in and garnish. So owing money to the state of Kansas is a little bit different, but I still think no matter what, you file because you want to get the clock running. Just understand that if you have both state and federal tax debt, you will probably have to give the state tax debt more priority than you do the federal tax debt. The federal tax debt, you can often get years on payback plans. I mean, you can
At
get
least a few years.
absolutely, absolutely, you can get a few years. But with the state, it's usually 12 months, and it's pretty quick.
Going back to filing taxes, do the taxes need to be filed if you want to file bankruptcy?
Okay, so generally, if you're going to do a bankruptcy, yes, the last 4 years of returns have to be filed. The question is, do they have to be filed before the case can be filed? I think the answer to that is
Maybe.
yeah, maybe. If you're going to do a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you are going to have to get those returns filed, and I want the returns filed before the bankruptcy gets filed. If you're going to do a Chapter 13, it can arguably wait, but it probably needs to be done within 30 to 60 days.
Well, if you're in a Chapter 13, you have to pay some of those taxes back. It's just a requirement.
Yeah.
Taxes that you owe for the last 3 years, income taxes, that is. So if we are not sure what that tax return is going to look like, if there's going to be an obligation or a refund, that will potentially affect your case or how much you have to pay in.
Yeah, it's hard to predict.
It's hard to predict, yeah.
Yeah. So we call those taxes that have to be paid back priority taxes. And so when we talk about priority debts, they get in front of things like medical bills, credit cards, and things like that. They get a priority. They do not get in front of usually secured creditors. But we need to know about those debts, and they can affect what the outcome of the case is and what the case looks like.
So if you get anything out of this, file your taxes.
Right. What if I had taxes where, let's say I file a bankruptcy case and it turns out I have 6 or 7 years of taxes I need to file, and I file all of them just after the case gets filed. Now I'm going to have to pay arguably whatever I owe on the 3 years. That's priority tax debt. What if I owe money on years 4 through 8? Let's say I owe another $5,000 or $10,000 out there. Am I going to have to pay that through the case?
You don't have to pay that through the case, but they
Great.
will.
It's going to go away?
It is not going to go away.
Oh,
it
terrible.
will survive the bankruptcy. You'll have to deal with it after the bankruptcy is done. And sometimes that can get really confusing. Sometimes it's confusing for us to figure out the dates.
So that tax debt is not a priority, but it's also
not dischargeable.
That's right. So non-priority, non-dischargeable tax debt. It's a real thing. It exists.
Yeah, talk to your attorney. Make sure you ask them if you ever filed a late return, if it's going to get discharged. Also, if there's a lien on your taxes, or not on your taxes, but if there's a tax lien, you have to also want to bring that up if it doesn't get brought up in an appointment.
Well, let's imagine I have a tax lien. that's outstanding. But let's also imagine that I don't have a house. I have a tax lien filed, I don't have a house, and let's say my tax lien is $15,000, and let's say that all the property I own in the universe is worth $5,000. Now I file a bankruptcy, let's say it's a Chapter 13, and I'm going to make payments. What do I have to pay to get rid of that tax lien?
Well, you have to pay the value of your items that are liened up, I guess. So $5,000 is what you would have to pay in. That will actually eliminate the lien, the IRS lien or Kansas Department of Revenue or estate tax lien.
And assuming the rest of the tax debt's dischargeable, I'm going to get away with a much
Correct.
lower amount.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you will be able to discharge the rest. Again, all of these tax situations are pretty unique. You should definitely discuss that in detail with your lawyer.
So we know that some tax debt is dischargeable, but we also know that each case is going to be independent.
Correct.
Okay, and file your taxes.
That's right. File your taxes.
File your taxes. Okay. All right, if you have any other questions, please let us know. If you need to stop creditor calls, harassment, collections, lawsuits, repossessions, garnishments, or foreclosures, please give us a call. Consultations are free.